This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get time. I don't get time.
And we are still not tired on episode number 34 of Two Bad Hombres. I'm your host, Vito Jerome Churko, alongside my usual sidekick and partner in crime. That is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, always great to catch up with you on the weekend. We got a jam-packed podcast this week. Looking forward to a conversation with Edward Pevos, M Live entertainment reporter. I think he wants to call me out because of my Stafford takes on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. And let's start with that, Vito. Earlier in the week, it was announced Monday night that Matthew Stafford is the highest paid NFL player of all time. And I lit up our Twitter page because of the fact that I am not a Stafford guy. And here's the reason why. Not that I don't agree with Bob Quinn in terms of the number. When I saw the number, $27 million, as I stated on the Motor City Sports Rant podcast that came out Tuesday, I'm all for that number. If you're going to make Matthew Stafford the highest paid player, and the previous contract, the highest paid player, Derek Carr, was making $25 million. If they had come out and paid Stafford $32 million a year, I would have been livid. It looks like a deal that's fair on both sides, in that Stafford doesn't go out there and try and destroy the Detroit Lions salary cap. He doesn't go out there and hold out and make this an ongoing story day in and day out by asking for a firm number. No, he kind of, you would assume, he kind of took a hometown deal a little bit, in that he took $27 million a year. That number is fair, and I give all credit to Bob Quinn and Stafford's representatives for making that deal. But now I then go and I ask myself, okay, is he going to live up to this contract? And yeah, everyone's going to come out and say, well, yeah, he earned it. This is market value. This is what quarterbacks that are average make. These quarterbacks are making all this kind of money. Well, I'm not everybody. I'm looking at it from a different perspective, in that I would build a team differently, in that I would focus on defense. I want an old school football team that I know can stop an opponent's running game, can stop the quarterback, can cause fear in the opponent. So I want to build differently. I don't want to give my quarterback $27 million. That's me. And then I threw out there on Twitter, okay, how does Stafford live up to this deal without making it in 5 years from now, where I come back and say, this is the worst deal that was ever signed in the history of contracts? He has to win a Super Bowl. And so you start going down the line and you ask yourself, okay, how many playoff wins does Stafford and the Lions have under his tenure now for the better part of 8-9 years? 0. How many, times has he gone up against Aaron Rodgers and thoroughly outplayed him? Not too many times. Just this last performance, the last time we got to see the Lions versus the New England Patriots, it's the 3rd preseason game. Who looked like the professional quarterback? Tom Brady dropping dimes, and you got Matthew Stafford getting his teammates killed out there. Do you see that pass he threw to Wick? He almost got Wick killed. In that, I am not a fan of Matthew Stafford. I don't think that I want to go with the philosophy of, well, every other Lions quarterback has been god-awful, so we got to roll with Matthew Stafford and pay him a boatload of money because he's better than average. No, I think for the Lions, and you and I both tried to do anything we can to break this curse, we need a lot more in terms of performances by the quarterback, in terms of taking that next step, going from a 7-9 team, an 8-8 team, sometimes going 9 or 10 wins, and then taking that next step to being a world-class football team. Is Matthew Stafford that guy? My opinion's no.
What do you want in a quarterback then? Are you admitting that you want an average quarterback? Because you admitted that Matthew Stafford is a better than average quarterback. You can give him that much, right? Maybe not a world-class or top-tier quarterback.
He can make all the throws. He can do some things. But in terms of when it's crunch time, crunch time. Yeah.
Fourth quarter comebacks. How many did he have last year? Crunch time.
Listen.
Crunch time.
I don't give him credit for being able to come back against Minnesota.
But how many teams did he do it against?
But then when it came down to crunch time, the last 4 games, all of a sudden he's hurt. And now all his numbers decline.
Well, there we go. He's hurt. He was hurt, though. What if you were playing hurt? Even Brady playing hurt. Now, that's Tom Brady, okay? We don't want to put him in the same class as Brady. Nobody should be put in the same class as Brady, by the way, even in the preseason, what you try to do there.
But, Vito, if you play this out, he has a storied record against teams that finish above 500, and some people will go and they'll, say that it's a team game and things like that.
Is.
But he's not blameless. He throws interceptions sometimes at horrible times. You got to remember, just 2 years ago in the 15 season, in October, the Lions played Arizona, and the first series he threw an interception, and he got benched by the current head coach, Jim Caldwell. So this is the guy that you're going to invest heavily in the future with. It's not me. I don't co-sign that. But, Vito, the question I would ask you is, do you believe Stafford is going to be standing up there on the podium after a Super Bowl with the Lombardi Trophy in his hand ever?
No, because he's a member of the Lions. It's about the team around him, too. You just brought it up yourself. You admitted it. What people say is that it's a team game. Well, it is. It's not just people admitting it. It is. It's a pure fact about the NFL and the sport of football. It's a team sport. It takes a team effort to win every single Sunday. If you don't have a great team around you, same thing, by the way, with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in New England. What do they have around those guys typically? Great talent.
But, Vito, if a guy's taking up $27 million of your cap, now, yes, it is going to be going up, but what if you just spent less on a quarterback and downgraded a little bit? Not to have a bum quarterback, but just a game manager. Spend maybe in the neighborhood of what the Bears did. Not for Mike Glennon per se, but you spend in the neighborhood of like 15 to 18 million, because I look around and I see Alex Smith. He's making around $17, $18 million a year. He's more of a game manager. But in the end, I would say I would build a strong defensive team and build the talent there through linebackers, through strong defensive end, through depth. And then I want to invest less in the quarterback because of the fact that we have the superstar guy, and where are we at with it? We're still waiting for a playoff win. Not on the trajectory of 1 year winning the division, then the next year winning a playoff game, then getting to the AFC title game, then getting to the Super Bowl. We're nowhere near that trajectory. We're not even in the game, Vito, with Matthew Stafford. So that's why I'm totally against it. I would take that money and invest it. I would not pay a quarterback more than 20, period. Because you got to remember.
So what if the going rate for even an average quarterback becomes $20 million, though? That's what's happening. I mean, so right now, Matt Stafford's the highest paid player in the league and in league history. But guess what? People are going to top him. As time goes on, quarterbacks will top him, including Kirk Cousins. He will be soon enough when the Redskins finally pay the man. Guys like that are going to top Matt Stafford. So him being the highest paid player in the league right now, I don't think it means that much to me. I don't put too much stock into it, and don't put my arms in the air and wheel them around and say, oh, that's horrible that the Lions are committing so much money to this guy when he hasn't had a playoff win to his name yet. Well, because it's about the team and the economic market, right? The going rate for quarterbacks in today's game. So you might be, the alternative might be paying an average quarterback $20 million a year soon enough.
Where were you when the news was broke?
Was in my bed looking at Twitter. Surveying Twitter for all the opinions from these media pundits that, break down the NFL, know the NFL inside and out, and much more than I do, much more than you do here on Two Bad Hombres, both of us on Two Bad Hombres. So I was trying to get a gauge of what other people thought, and I think what people think is that the Lions are so dependent upon Matt Stafford that, going in the direction of replacing with somebody else, you are starting anew then. You don't have a foundation then. If you lose Matt Stafford, if the Lions didn't commit to him long-term and decided to go in a new direction, what's the alternative? And you start off from square one, and you have nothing. You have nothing in your foundation then. You're a diddly squat ball club in the NFL once again, and we've already been down that road many times, right, as Lions fans. Even for me as a 24-year-old, you would start from square one as a diddly squat ball club that can't even muster 3 or 4 wins maybe without Matt Stafford and with his alternative
Vito, I'm
intact.
throw out.
That's what I'm thinking. That's why I don't think fans wanted to go down that or should have wanted to go down that direction. And that's why I think some NFL pundits out there are saying this contract is satisfactory, at least because also it's the going rate for quarterbacks nowadays that are even just a bit above average, which is how I value and look at Matt Stafford.
Vito, Matthew Stafford is not average in terms of what he's making. He is the number one paid quarterback of all time. Of all time in
league history, of all players in league history.
Of all players in league history. So we're not talking about, Derek Carr making 25. We're not talking about Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady. We're talking about the guy. So when you are the guy, you are expecting lots of tough performances. So I'm going to throw out a name to you, and I'm going to tell you and ask you how you rate this quarterback. Is Dak Prescott really that great a quarterback?
No, but what he has, okay.
What does he have?
You brought up the defense, but guess what? The Lions.
Guess what else you can build?
And the ground game, the line, and the ground game, a number one back, a legit number one back in Ezekiel Elliott, who's suspended 6 games now, by the way. But I know you're going back to his status as a relevant running back, as a number one back that might be the best in the league already. The Lions have to get there to that point, though. My point was that you're starting from square one, right? If you lose Stafford, you don't have that kind of ground game to build around the ground game. And specifically, you don't have the line to build around, to build up your ground game.
I'm saying that if you build a line...
But you have to do it, so are you willing to go...
Yes.
To 0 wins, another 0-16 season perhaps, or 1 win or 2 wins to build up that line, because they haven't built the lineup even when they've been bad and have had top draft picks. Remember that, though, too. They've messed up so many years not building up their line when they could have, should have, and maybe could have had a great line intact by now.
Yes, Vito, that's exactly what I'm saying, in that Dak Prescott benefited from walking into the league's best offensive line, a great running back. Boom, he just dinks and dunks, and he's got a great receiver in Des Bryant, great tight end in Jason Witten, and he's like dink, 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 and now everyone's talking like Dak Prescott is the newest, greatest thing in the entire world, and you only paid him less than $700,000 last year to do that. I would prefer, in my way of building a team, to go that route, which is, hey, if you want to take your lumps, you make the decision that, hey, maybe you franchise Stafford this year, you see what he can do with this schedule in 2017, and if you decide that, hey, this is not the guy, then maybe you move on from him. Or you go to yourself and you say, maybe I can build an offensive line with the added funds that we have by not paying a quarterback that much money. Now I got my offensive line, I got a running game, and I can just drop any quarterback that I drafted in the 5th round, and he can come in and just kind of manage the game and have a 13-win year. That's a little bit better than what Stafford has ever done. So in essence, my main argument is that people will come at me and say is that I want to build a football team differently. I just don't want to pay a quarterback that much money in this NFL. I don't want to pay that. I don't want to pay the quarterback.
But then the Cowboys are lucked into that situation too with getting Dak Prescott. I want the 4th round or something.
But then what are you paying Bob Quinn all that money to do? I pay him to watch the college game and go out there and pluck guys. You pluck Jake Rudock. You plucked Kaya. Go out there and pluck guys that you can plug and play. You know?
Well, let me ask you now. Right now, the alternative would be starting Jake Rudock, more than likely, if you didn't have Stafford.
I could roll
Would
with
you
that.
be fine? You would be fine with that?
I would be fine with that. Now, do I think Jake Rudock is much better than Matthew Stafford? Hell no. But it's win-win. If he struggles, then you draft higher and you get your guy that you
Would
watch.
they draft the right guy? But I know your point is that you believe in Bob Quinn to make the right pick, or you have to give him the chance to make the right pick, right?
Yes.
To get that line built up. And you would start there then with the O-line or D-line? What would you start with, by the way, if you were Bob Quinn and would have gone in that direction of getting rid of Stafford?
Well, based upon what we're doing, it seems like it's an offensive league, so you go with an offensive line, start building there. For me personally, my personal preference is building through the defense, but hell, if you want to go out there and build a massive offensive line so that any average running back can run through it, I'd do that too. So that's just my difference of opinion. I think that's where people are against me, in that we got this sexy young quarterback that's in his prime, and he can throw, and he's much better than any garbage we've seen. But at the same time, just watch late in games. See how many interceptions he throws. I think that the Lions brass has neutered him. Jim Bob Cooter has a check down offense where Stafford doesn't throw the ball more than 25 yards, not too many times, because when he does, the rate of interceptions goes way up. Just watch the offense. Watch specifically when you see the Lions play offense. A lot of check downs. The offensive line usually breaks down so that he's got no time, but the offense is not predicated on throwing the ball deep quite a bit of time. It's not a run and gun offense. It's a methodical offense that's really boring the last couple years, and that's part of the reason why that offense is boring is Matthew Stafford. And I can't wait to get Edward on the line, and I think he might be challenging me regarding Matthew Stafford. We'll talk to him next, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but Aaron McMann, MLive Michigan beat reporter, will also be joining us on this very fine podcast, because when this podcast drops, college football starts, baby, early September. So a great stacked podcast. Let's dial up Edward and get him here on the line. As advertised, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Edward Pevos, MLive entertainment reporter, joins us. As you know, he's active on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. He wanted to chime in regarding the news of the week around town in Detroit sports. Matthew Stafford is the highest paid NFL quarterback, the highest paid NFL athlete of all time, and Edward had some strong opinions regarding those that disagree that he deserved to have that contract.
Oh, I do, man. I'm going to tell you what, I've been irritated for 2 days, or for the past day and a half, just listening and reading all these comments of people that claim to be Lions fans that apparently are unhappy. You should be ecstatic that Stafford has signed on a 5-year extension plus next year to stay in Detroit. I mean, he could go anywhere he wants. He's not from Detroit. He's not from Michigan. He can go anywhere he wants, and he's chose to stay here. I mean, I'm over 40 years old. I've seen so many quarterbacks come and go that have been bad, average, hopeful, Heisman winners. I mean, everybody from I watched Chuck Long. That's how old I mean, it is awful So, okay, he's the highest paid player in the NFL. Won't last for long. There'll be multiple players next year. I mean, Kirk Cousins is going to make more money than Matthew Stafford. Is Kirk Cousins, in your opinion, better than Matthew Stafford? I mean, he's gonna be the highest paid quarterback at some point. And imagine that, Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's solid, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. So the quarterback is the most important position in all of professional sports. Agree or disagree? I mean, is there any other sport, soccer, hockey, anything, that there's a more important position that you can think of than the quarterback? I can't. And when you finally have a good one and he's willing to stay here and you're upset about it, I don't get it. That's kind of my opinion on that whole situation. So
I think you live and die by your franchise passer, Ed. And I think what is the alternative is what you should ask Lions fans, right? Well, what we should ask Lions fans that think, like Doc himself here, who's just being stupid now about, hey, let's turn to something else, a different brand of football that hasn't worked in so long now where you do the ground and pound and play by having a great defense and win that way, which is great to have the D, but I think it just goes back to the point of what's the alternative. You haven't had a great quarterback like this since Bobby Lane, let's say, and I'm only 24 and I've realized that. You've been around a lot longer, Ed, and I realized that myself, that, the Lions haven't had great QBs before Stafford, so where would they turn if they did displace him as their starting QB?
Exactly. I mean, it's been since 1958. They've been looking for 50 years for a good quarterback. And they finally found one, and people are upset that he's making so much money. You have to pay. I mean, you have to invest in the most important position in all pro sports. There are only maybe 8-9 quarterbacks better than Matthew Stafford, but none of them are going to be available for the Lions. Okay, you'd love to have Aaron Rodgers. You'd love to have Tom Brady a few years ago and sign him for a 5-year deal or something like that. You can't. I mean, he's still in his prime. Yeah, like you said, there has not been a good quarterback. We went through Joey Harrington, Stoney Case, or Case Keenum. There's so many names out there that we went through. The pain of trying one quarterback after another, draft after draft after draft. And people are going to make the case, okay, well, what about like Dak Prescott? I mean, he's 1 in a billion. I mean, that never happens. To get a rookie to do that well, that came out of nowhere, a low, mid-round draft choice. That's so rare. I mean, and all you have to do, and Lion fans seem to have short memories. Last year is all you need to look at. No running game at all. No pass rush on defense. No linebackers. There was one game, I don't even think they had a tight end on their roster, and I think Zach Zenner was the starting running back and George Wynn, and that was all they had. And they made the playoffs. The quarterback makes up so much for lack of other positions. It's ridiculous. And we have a top 10 one. Be nice if he won some playoff games. Yes, it'd be nice if, a lot of things. But, I mean, we're only going to have him for maybe another 10 more years. And then it could be another 50 years of
But Edward, listen to what you're saying. You're saying that because of the Lions' history and how bad they are, you might be willing to sit through 18 years of Matthew Stafford, who in essence could be the biggest tease of all time, because you want to pay $27 million a year to a guy who's good in the regular season, in essence.
But that's the going rate right now, Doc.
Yeah, that's a good point. He could be the biggest tease, but you know what? You look at other teams in the league, Cleveland, the Jets, Jacksonville, you've got at least 10 teams that have been where the Lions were. They're drafting quarterback after quarterback. They're getting free agents. They're bringing them in. I mean, look at Mike Glennon is making $15 million a year. this year to play in Chicago, a guy that is a nobody. He's not a good quarterback. $15 million.
But he might get a playoff win before Matthew Stafford at a cheaper price.
Trubinsky will get a higher playoff win before that. But I'm baffled, and I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Lions fans are saying. And the salary cap's a big deal, and you want to invest in your team, and you want to invest in different positions. But that's where you have to have faith in Bob Quinn. That's where you have to have faith. They're going to draft well, and they're going to invest money in free agents. And I've seen that in the first 2 years so far. I've seen results that I haven't seen in previous administrations with Mayhew, and we're not even going to mention the other guy's name because it's just what a waste of 10 years that was in my life. But I've seen positive signs that they are making the right moves and the right investments, and that you definitely, you don't need to let a quarterback go and invest in other areas. You're only going to get maybe 2 good players, maybe. With that money, it's not that impactful when the quarterback position is the most impactful. It has to be Matthew Stafford. They have no choice. That's who they have, and they're investing in him. So, it's do or die, and I'm okay with it. So.
Edward Pevos, entertainment reporter for MLive, loves him some Matthew Stafford and getting in here in the mix, in the debate. I love it. Good stuff. So then, okay, I understand completely. You are very rational. You understand that you got to pay the quarterback. So now that he's making the money, he signed the deal. He's going to be making $27 million per season. What do the Lions have to do in your mind to make that contract worth it? Do they just have to make a run in the postseason, get to the Super Bowl? Is your expectation now that he's the guy potentially for the next maybe 5 or 10 years more? Is the expectation that Stafford hoist that Lombardi trophy after a Super Bowl win? Is that your expectation? Because now mine. It's mine.
Yeah, it has to be. And any Lions fan or any fan of sports that doesn't go for it all, whether you're playing professional football or playing kickball, recreation kickball, you have to have the goal of winning it all. And that is their goal, and that better be the Lions' goal, and that better be every Lions fan's wish. And there's 30, 31 NFL teams. It's hard to win an NFL game. It's hard to make the playoffs. It's really hard to win a playoff game. Almost nobody wins. One team is it. That's it. That wins the Super Bowl. It's really difficult to do. But I think the Lions are positioning themselves with Matthew Stafford still in his prime. I think they've drafted well. We'll see how it works out this year. I think they've started to draft really well. You got to give it a few years here, but I really think they're on the right path. And Stafford is still improving. You look at a guy like, for instance, like Blake Bortles has really regressed, and he's much younger than Stafford. RG3, he got hurt, but I don't even think he's in the league anymore. So Stafford is still improving his game after, however many seasons he's been in the league, 8-9 years here. He's still getting better, and he showed that last year. So to have that guy in his prime that's still getting better and has showed no signs of regress. Yes, winning playoff games has been that has to be the next step. This year, they have to win a playoff game or 2. I really think they do. I think they have a good enough team, depending on injuries. I think they have depth this year. I think they've got some good depth. Quinn did a really nice job with that, but I really think they need to win the division and win a playoff game this year minimum. It'd be nice to get a Super Bowl. That is the goal.
See, now that's where
the goal.
Yeah, that's where we're different, is that I ask that question of myself and I say, do I see Matthew Stafford, a team led by him, having success in the postseason? And my rational brain tells me no. So I'm hoping that I'm getting shocked and that, the Lions can pull it all together. But throughout the course of an NFL season, you might have to lean on that quarterback to step it up when the lights are the brightest. And has he done it yet? No. So those that are thinking that he's going to do it are not using their rational brain. What they're doing is they're hoping that he can take that next step. And where I'm at is I'm just judging by what I've seen in the last 8 years, and I haven't seen much. So if I'm going to be shocked, I'm going to have to see a lot more from this quarterback that they've made the highest paid of all time.
I'm with you on that, and I really hope we see it, and I really think we will. I think he showed signs last year of playing under pressure, big comebacks. I think he broke an NFL record with fourth quarter comebacks. So I think he can play under pressure. He can play on the big stage. And I think this year and next year they take a step. They have to. They really have to. I compare this to the Pistons back in the 2000s there. I really didn't think they were ready to make it to the conference finals, and they won the championship that year. I'm not saying the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl this year or next year, but I really think they're going to be competitive and be a playoff team. And all you have to do is get in, and you can win if you have that stud quarterback. And if Stafford continues to improve, and he improved last year, and he was elite in multiple moments. He was elite. Not saying he's elite, saying he was elite. If he can become consistently elite, that's a game changer. And that can bring playoff wins, and that can bring a Super Bowl. It's tough to win a Super Bowl, but I think we're putting ourselves in the right position. So
now,
we'll
as the entertainment reporter for MLive, what are your day-to-day tasks? What do you do over there at MLive?
Yeah, so I do entertainment. How broad is that? So I interview celebrities. I go to big events. I go to concerts. I go to anything from Comic-Cons and the Renaissance Festival to covering everything quirky in this whole state. A lot of travel related things, just whatever's fun in Michigan. And there's so much here, especially in the Detroit area. So we just have so much entertainment, so much going on. Kid Rock just announced a new restaurant going to be opening up about 20 minutes ago. It's going to be opening up at Little Caesars Arena. That's coming up in a week and a half, the first concert, so I'll be there. So everything entertainment related to the Detroit area and Michigan, just big events, big concerts, and big happenings. So it's fun. Good stuff.
Ed, Vito Churko here, and I see on your Twitter page, your Twitter avatar is of Jack Bauer. Now, it's Kiefer Sutherland, but I like to call him Jack Bauer from 24, a show that I watched dearly and actively and every single week, and I loved him. I loved the character, and what was it like meeting him, by the way?
Oh, my gosh. Well, first, he's a little shorter than I thought, because I'm only 5'8", and if I recall, he was maybe an inch shorter than me. I can't remember, but what a nice guy. Like, I've interviewed a lot of people, and he probably ranks up in the top 5. Like, very humble. He's not your Jack Bauer. I mean, he's not like intense. I mean, he was just humble. Hey, can I buy you a drink type guy? Like Kiefer Sutherland. Hey, can I buy you a drink? Seriously, like, how cool is that? He was just a nice guy, and that's all I can say. Like, if he was not a nice guy, believe me, I would tell you that. But he was really cool and just very humble, and didn't even, he doesn't even seem like that he was a TV or movie star. Just very, very down to earth type person.
One final thing: have you had a celebrity moment where you were, standing across from someone and were just like, wow, and almost had a moment where you kind of are like speechless, or act a little bit silly when you're around these celebrities, because there's always one or two people that you meet that you've been a fan of for such a long time, and then you're in their presence and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even speak.
It doesn't happen very often. Maybe Drew Barrymore. That was a very memorable moment because she had an entourage around her and she had some security. And then when you finally spoke to her, it was kind of weird because of how big she is, A-list, and that was a while ago. So that was one of my earlier encounters. So maybe with her, I would have to say, because there's a lot of celebrities like Dave Coulier will just kind of drive up and himself and, hey, how you doing, like he's your pal. But then you have some with big entourages like her and like Selena Gomez or something. But there's some that are just really down to earth, and it takes like a half a second to get that awestruck out of you, because you realize, all right, these guys are just normal, cool, down to earth, people. So Kiefer was one of them, and Drew kind of was, I guess, the opposite a little bit, but she was really sweet too, though.
Edward Pevos, you can follow him at Paparazzo Pevos. We enjoyed the conversation immensely. Look, feel free. You can message us on our Twitter page anytime. Mix it up. But in the future, Vito and I love talking about gossip, celebrity stuff too. So we'd love to check in from time to time regarding, the entertainment beat. And when Stafford throws 4 interceptions, I'll be tagging you and some things down the line as well. So I enjoyed the chat, man. Thank you.
I expect it. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
That was an enjoyable conversation with Edward Pevos from MLive. That was really fun, and I look forward to future conversations with him regarding the Lions and his work as an entertainment reporter. Vito, real quick, is there anybody that you would freak out, if there was an A-list celebrity that you came across?
I don't know if I would freak out too much, but being nervous, I guess, maybe not geek out and just start talking and rambling on and on about something that's like, not even important, but maybe Jim Leland, I would like, get nervous and more nervous than I would interviewing somebody else who's not even an A-list celebrity. It would be cool to see Jack Bauer, though, which is Kiefer Sutherland once again, which Edward talked about meeting him. And that's a really cool encounter, I bet. And he made it sound like that, too. And it sounded like he was a really nice guy, Kiefer, as well.
Vito, I really enjoy the project where those that are passionate about something will feel free to just message. And Edward did that. He messaged us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. And that's the fun. It stayed respectful. That's the fun of debating sports, is that you can have two sides that are debating the same thing, and we're all wanting the Lions to win. It's just that we're questioning, do we think Matthew Stafford can lead the team? I say no. Others say yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the next 5 years. But we're able to have all these great guests, have these great conversations because we use a great host site. Vito, if you're starting a brand new project, a brand new podcast, everybody here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, we're going to recommend Podomatic because of the fact that once you record a podcast, you can upload it to the host site real quick. You can generate links so that all your supporters can find it within minutes. The reason why we've grown successful and the reason why we have great guests like Edward and Aaron McMann coming up is because of the fact that, hey, we use the great host site, Podomatic.com. And because of that, we're able to generate quality links that people can listen to each and every week. That's why we're uploading 5-6 podcasts each and every week to our platform. So, Vito, when you wake up and decide to go on your own, definitely use Podomatic.com. All right, Vito, dial up Aaron McMann. I'm curious to hear what's going on with the Michigan Wolverines ahead of their first contest opening the season versus the Florida Gators.
And now joining me on episode number 34 of Two Bad Hombres is MLive.com Michigan football beat writer Aaron the Man McMann. Aaron, how's it going?
Good, Vito. Navigating traffic to Ann Arbor as we speak, actually. And it's raining out, so it's not exactly the best, but it's good to be with you.
No, not the most lovely day, but it's always lovely having you on the phone line with me. And out this time, courtesy of Vito's VIP line, by the way, on Two Bad Hombres. And first and foremost, I really haven't ever asked you directly, what does the job of a beat writer at MLive entail for you?
For me, quite a bit. I've been on this. I've been coming on your show for a couple of years now. It seems like almost every year, it's my job is shifted. I was covering the Tigers for a summer a couple of years ago. Then I was obviously been covering the Pistons the last couple of years, and now we've had some shuffling the last couple of years. Guys have left, guys have moved on. Spots have kind of opened up, and now I'm covering Michigan football and basketball. But it's it's long, it's grueling, It's fun in a way just because, you get paid to write about sports, obviously, and you're on the game, you're on these players, these personalities, often. So that in that respect, it's fun. Same time, it's long, it's grueling, it kind of wears on you sometimes. And, I think to some degree, and my friends joke with me all the time about this, but, to some degree I become jaded. You feel like you've seen everything, you've heard everything. And there's not a lot that can top it. So, but no, it's good, it's fun, and I really shouldn't complain. It's really a dream job.
Well, really, you shouldn't complain, and I will not allow that to happen here. So let's stop that. I'm going to stop that in instantaneous fashion here on Two Bad Hombres with Aaron McMann of MLive.com. He is doing the dual beat writing job with MLive, covering U of M basketball and U of M football, currently in the fall with U of M football, and the craziness surrounding, and that is Jim Harbaugh, the U of M football head man, and what the heck is it like covering Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, it's a whirlwind. He's one of those personalities who I think anything he does and everything he does, is scrutinized. Whether it's the U of M fan base coming to his side, it's the opposing fan base upset over something he's done or said. Everything everything he touches kind of turns to gold, so to speak. He reminds me a little bit, and he's probably in a bigger personality than this person. But, Stan Van Gundy, I was thinking about this the other day, and, I had the honor of covering the Pistons the last couple of years. But Stan Van Gundy, in some ways, it was the same way. He always had something to say. He always had an opinion about something. People looked to him as, for their opinions and their takes. But, Harbaugh is just he's an enigma. He's a personality. He's someone everyone tends to gravitate towards, whether you're a fan of him or not. People seem to care about him. So it's fun. I will say that.
And I bet there are a lot of differences between covering him and then the U of M basketball head man, John Beilein.
Yeah. Beilein's obviously a lot less. He's more, closer to the vest, I guess, so to speak. He's a more of a dry personality, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. That's just who he is. He's quiet. He's dry. Where in Harbaugh, to some extent, kind of is the same way. But it's hard to compare football and basketball just because football is the sport at Michigan. It always has been, and I think it always will be. Basketball is a little bit more niche. So, obviously more people care from the get-go. So I think that has something to do with it. But everybody's got their own personality and their way of doing things. So, it is what it is. No, you'll never hear me complaining about coach. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's good to hear. And Harbaugh is just crazy unique. I mean, the most unique coach out there, a rock star head coach, and like the only one in all of collegiate sports, maybe in all of professional athletics too. And, you were speaking of being and keeping things close to the vest. Well, Harbaugh lately with the quarterback quandary, who's going to start there? We think Wilton Spate, but John O'Korn still is being mentioned as a candidate, and I guess everybody is on that quarterback depth chart. And speaking of a depth chart, there's no roster that's been released formally. And I guess this is just Harbaugh being Harbaugh in so many words, Aaron.
It is, and I've written about this quite a bit here. Last week or so, I'm live. Our sister website, NJ.com, filed a Freedom of Information Act request of Michigan earlier in the month for the roster. They couldn't get it. But yeah, I mean, this has slowly kind of been Harbaugh's thing. When he first came here, I can remember helping cover the team a couple years ago in his first year at U of M, where he didn't provide a dress list to the media. Now, most people watching or hearing this probably don't care about it. But from a media standpoint, it helps us determine, who's dressed and able to play and who isn't. Typically programs give that out. Michigan did not. You flash forward to last year, and they stopped producing a depth chart. It was, they got made fun of a couple times. I can remember, I think Colorado was who kind of produced they produced their own depth chart with cartoon characters, just poking fun at Michigan. And now this year, he's kind of waiting until the very last minute to produce a roster. One has to come out. I had a Michigan spokesman tell me that, the Big Ten and the NCAA require one just, for statistical and everything purposes and everything else, clerical things. So they do have to produce one, but, Jim's taking his time with it. He's making no bones about it, and he's doing what he wants.
I've heard that the quarterback might not even be announced until game day against Florida. And yeah. I got to believe it's Spate, but what are you hearing about that too, Aaron?
Yeah. I will say this, kind of coming into camp, I think most of us in the media thought it was going to be was going to be between Spate and redshirt freshman Brandon Peters. He's a guy who, from all accounts, impressed in the spring game. Everybody likes his arm. He has the largest upside of all three of them. And then, Harbaugh comes in midway through camp and says, well, it's down to Spate and O'Korn. So I think that kind of raised some eyebrows, so to speak. Maybe not so much with Peters, because keep in mind, he's only a redshirt freshman. He's got plenty of time to grow and learn and everything else. But for O'Korn to still be in that mix, I think raised some eyebrows amongst some of us. Then we got to speak with John, maybe a few days later. And he sounded really confident. It was one of those things where, you expect him to come out and say the right things, say the things, like he's in the mix, everything else. But he had this era of confidence to him. He complimented the new passing game coordinator, Pep Hamilton, for coming in and kind of changing things for him. He feels more confident in the pocket. His arm is as strong as it ever has been. He feels like he understands the playbook better. He feels more confident behind the offensive line. So, at this point, smart money says it's going to be Spade just based on experience and everything else. And I think there's something to that with Michigan opening up against Florida, at AT&T Stadium, in this big time atmosphere against this big time team. I think Spade makes sense to be the guy. But at the same time, don't be shocked if O'Korn ends up being the guy. There's just some weird thing hanging out there that O'Korn may be closer than people think.
Now, Aaron, there's been much hullabaloo regarding the Michigan jerseys, what they're going to wear on Saturday. Is it the traditionalists that don't like the colors? What's going on with the jersey, and why is there such an uproar regarding what the team is going to wear in their first matchup?
Yeah, that's if you check my Twitter feed the last couple of days, it's been a lot of back and forth. Some people, like them, obviously. I think that audience tends to trail more toward the younger generation, the folks that are our age, the mid-20s, 30s, that like the change and the different color schemes and things like that. But yeah, it does definitely seem like the traditionalists, I think, are more opposed. I was at Harbaugh's radio interview last night at Pete's House in Ann Arbor. And a lot of times with those things, you get a lot of the old season ticket holders, the folks who've been on the program a long time, the folks that, donate to the team and the university and the program. And I was kind of looking around when they brought the whole jersey instance up, and a lot of those folks weren't happy. They kind of scoffed and didn't seem to be happy about it. The important thing to remember in all this is going to be, as far as I know, and as far as they've said, it's going to be a one-game thing. It's going to be strictly, the Florida game this Saturday. At the same time, Florida's going with an all-blue kind of scheme as well. So I think this is kind of made for this game. It's neutral site, big-time game, all blue versus all maize. But yeah, the reaction certainly has been mixed.
Now, regarding the U of M roster and personnel, I've heard a lot of concerns recently about the defensive backfield not being good enough, and there just being concerns about it outside of really sophomore cornerback Lavert Hill, a Detroit King alum. And what are you seeing in terms of the secondary and it potentially being unstable and not ready for the matchup with Florida to open up the season?
Yeah, that was something that Mike Zordich, the secondary coach last week, kind of came out and he was brutally honest about it. He basically said that these guys weren't, improving or advancing like he, wanted or maybe expected. At the same time, expectations are high. This is Michigan. A lot of these guys are expected to play up and be good. Be able to compete at a Big Ten level. The important thing to remember with the secondary is it's so young. You've got none of these guys who are expected to play or even start have started a game at the college level. So a lot of these guys are being kind of in a way thrown in the fire for the first time. You mentioned Lavert Hill, obviously. David Long's a guy that's competing for another cornerback spot. Brandon Watson's up there. The safety seems set at this point. Josh Metellus is one of those guys. Tyreek Cannell's another. So for the safety seems set. Corners are more open at this point, but the bottom line remains, these guys are young. It's going to take some time. And actually, I think in some regards, Florida's probably the best. Is a good opportunity for them to kind of show what they got. Florida's that they have quarterback issues at this point. Their top receiver was suspended, so Michigan they'll be tested. Will they? I guess time will tell whether or not they can live up to it.
Aaron McMann of MLive.com on the line with me, courtesy of Vito's VIP line. And Aaron is the definition of a VIP. We'll see how many VIPs actually exist on this U of M football team this season in terms of how they perform. We know we have the head coach who's a great recruiter, but then there comes the stance or point about maybe coaching up the team in the X's and O's. He's had a great, record so far as U of M head man, but now this year, what are you going to get out of Michigan and how much progress will we see out of this team who has which has lost a lot of talent. And for me, when I look at the schedule, Aaron, I see 2 losses at the most leading into that big Ohio State matchup, which I believe Harbaugh has to win this season. And I guess first and foremost for you, though, Aaron, leading into that OSU ball game, what do you imagine the U of M record looking like?
That's a good question. I've had discussions with several people right now. I think the Florida game is going to go a long way to kind of, showing what this team is capable of and kind of, guiding their season. I could see one of two situations here. I could see Michigan losing this Florida game coming up and maybe going 8-4 this season. Struggling at Penn State, struggling at home against Penn State, struggling on the road at Wisconsin. So I could see it going one of two ways. I could theoretically see them being 10-1 going into that final game against Ohio State. I could see that determining them whether or not they're going to play for a Big Ten title. But I could also see them, like I said, being 7-4 and needing that win to kind of, sell the fan base, settle the folks in Harbaugh. Because like you mentioned, they've done okay under Harbaugh, pair of 10-3 seasons. That's great. At the same time, I think the fan base at this point expects more. I think many of them want them to win 9, 10, 11 games in the regular season. I think a win over Ohio State would go far. But yeah, I really don't know at this point. I think this Florida game is going to tell a lot.
In this third year under Harbaugh, it seems like to me he has to beat Ohio State. And if he doesn't, I believe it hurts his legacy as U of M football head man, no matter what he's achieved up to this point. And it's been incredible and great. But I think it does take some luster away from his legacy if he fails to beat Ohio State for a third straight year. Aaron.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think he needs to get that win. I think if Michigan were to somehow crap the bed this year and go 7-5 and, suffer some injuries and struggle in the secondary like some may think they will, a win over Ohio State, like I said, I think would save some butts. They need to be Ohio State. They need to win a big game. They didn't do that a whole lot, do so much last year. I think part of that obviously falls on Golden State and then that offensive line last year. But I think they're more prepared, and I think it's going to come down to a couple things: Spate, and those young receivers. And I think if they can get some production early on from those receivers, because they'll be fine running back. I think they'll be all right offensively, and we all know the defensive lines they're strong suit at this point.
And going back to the secondary really quick, how about some young secondary guys in Jalen Kelly-Powell and Ambry Thomas? What do you expect from them this year, and will we see them getting early PT this season from Harbaugh?
Yeah, Ambry Thomas is a guy whose name has come up, basically ever since the beginning of camp. Harbaugh's mentioned his name. Don Brown, the defensive coordinator, brought his name up. Kelly Powell's an interesting guy too. He's one who was expected to come in and play at corner. They moved him to safety a little bit. They've been working with him at both corner and safety. I think they like him at safety. But at the same time, they're lacking a corner. So yeah, I do see Kelly Powell getting some playing time. In fact, I think I asked Harbaugh yesterday about the quarterback situation, and he brought up Kelly Powell's name. So given how young they are and how inexperienced they may be, you may see Kelly Powell sooner than some anticipated.
Well, Aaron, I'm glad you posed a question about him because that was expected of you, since you were assigned to do this podcast today. So very glad you did that. And now, Aaron, I know you're a man that's worthy of all the money that you make at MLive. Really quick, wanted to get this in about Matt Stafford. Is he worth all the money he has now been paid and will be getting paid over this 5-year contract extension that he has been given by the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, the contract situation is always a touchy subject, and it always gets folks riled up. I can remember, covering the Pistons, Andre Drummond getting signed that max deal too, that made him the richest, highest paid Pistons guy ever. I think it all comes down to market value. You've got guys that almost every year or two you're going to hear about a player that's going to end up being the highest paid player in all of whatever sport they play in. It all comes out of the market. What contracts are going for, what the salary cap sits at. How teams value certain guys. Because my thing is always this, if you're a fan of, say, the Lions, and you're looking at Stafford's contract and what he's getting, you got to look at it from the opposite point of view. It had the Lions not settle on this amount or, not desired to pay Stafford what he wants, more than likely he's going to get it elsewhere. So, do you want him on your team or do you not? And so that's kind of how you got to look at things. He is obviously a guy that touches the ball every time. He's your playmaker. He's your top guy. You want to make him happy, and if you want him around long term, you got to pay him. I know it might be difficult to swallow for some folks, but I think the Lions made the right move. But
Aaron, swallow it, because you know what? You got to pay the man. He is the man for the Lions under center, and he's really the best player on that team, clear cut, and that's why you got to pay him. And the Lions have, I think, perfectly done so, and it's the market. The market dictates the player's value, and it's all about that, as you noted yourself, Aaron. And I think the market dictates that you're a man of quality, covering the U of M football and now basketball beat too.
I appreciate it. I really do.
All right, Aaron. Great talking to you. You have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Vito. You too, man.
And back here on Two Bad Hombres, that was Aaron McMann of MLive.com. He covers the U of M football and basketball beat for MLive, and always great to have him on, lending his insight. Now, precisely on U of M football this week on Two Bad Hombres, little bit of John Beilein talk about the differences between covering Harbaugh and then Beilein. Obviously, Harbaugh a bit different than John Beilein in terms of covering him and, the antics, the personality traits, right, of the two guys. Totally different at times, too, as McMahon pointed out. And then we talked a little bit about Stafford, as we had to get into that just a bit, and about the uniforms, too, which you brought up. And a lot of reaction to those unis right now, Doc.
Before we get out of here, next week what we'll do is we'll recap a little bit of my trip in Traverse City because I want to give it some time. And we'll definitely do that on next week's podcast. But I want to get your sense, Vito. How are you feeling about the Michigan Wolverines?
Right now, I think they could have 2 losses leading into that Ohio State game, and I see them losing to OSU for a 3rd straight year under Harbaugh, which I really believe, as Aaron was kind of getting at and saying how people are starting to believe it, that, especially the old-timers, that if Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State for a 3rd straight year as a head man at U of M, it takes away from his legacy. I think he loses luster. in so many words, at least a bit of luster, and it takes a bit away from his legacy and all that he has achieved up to this point as U of M football head man. And, circa 2015, he was this great coach, still a rock star, but this great hire that could do no wrong, and he led the team to a great season, and the team overachieved. You could really say that about the U of M football squad under Harbaugh's leadership in 2015. Last year, they kind of failed to take that next step, still a high-quality year. And now this year, they could be due for a downward trend of a season, which isn't good for Harbaugh in year number 3 when you want to really start seeing him win with his own players, as he really was winning with Hoke's. Remember, Brady Hoke's players really were a large part of the team the past 2 years when Harbaugh was the head man. This is really the first year where Harbaugh is coaching his own players and now has the duty of winning with his own players. Can he win with his own collection of talent that he has assembled in Ann Arbor? It's a big year for him to do so, and especially once again to beat Ohio State, which, sad but true, as a little bit of a U of M fan now more, Doc, than I have been before. It's sad to say that I don't see Harbaugh in this U of M football team beating Ohio State in year number 3 under Harbaugh.
There's nothing wrong with saying that Urban Meyer owns Jim Harbaugh. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
And we won't be able to say that, which is sad for Harbaugh. Won't it be? And for U of M fans, all the faithful and hardcore fans that can't see anything wrong with Harbaugh, well, that's going to be what's wrong with Harbaugh, right? If he can't beat OSU for a third straight year, don't you think it takes away a little bit from his luster and his legacy, Doc, as U of M football head man?
Full disclosure, as everyone knows, I'm a Spartan supporter, so I love it.
Yeah, I know for you love seeing. But let me ask you, actually, Michigan and Ohio State, who would you rather see lose? It's always U of M?
Oh, it's
because
always
of that bigger rivalry, obviously, U of M.
100%. I want to see the heat turned up a little bit on Jim Harbaugh to win the big game. And in the big game, there's been some situations where the offense has been a little bit tight. They haven't closed out games. And Vito, you still also have to, not to make excuses, but the team lost a bunch of quality seniors. And when you look and scour the landscape across the NFL, there's several Michigan players that are contributing and doing a good job. So it's hard to replenish that. Only a handful of programs and coaches can replenish talent and just, plug and play whoever. Alabama, Ohio State, now Clemson's in that mix. Yeah. There's only a handful of teams that can do that. So if Michigan loses, in all seriousness, there's going to be a little bit more heat because I don't think the fan base that's really hardcore wants to go 10-2 every year and not make it to the playoff. Now, where Michigan's at is they're a national program. The expectations should be in line with where they're at in terms of you have a national head coach, you got to produce. And if you want to be 10-2 every year, that's fine. But at the same time, I really do think that the heat's going to start to get turned up a little bit more. Not to the point where it's smoldering, but the heat's going to get a little bit turned up more if Michigan doesn't turn around this rivalry with Ohio State. Because in the last decade, it really hasn't even been a rivalry. There haven't been that many games where Michigan's won. So Jim Harbaugh and Michigan got to do some things in the next couple years in order to get back on the right side of things in the Ohio State rivalry.
I think really quick, Harbaugh's been outcoached by D'Antonios 2 straight years. I think he was outcoached by Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, and that Iowa lost on the road at Iowa last year. I think Harbaugh has been outcoached by Urban Meyer as well, and Urban Meyer can replace his players with the snap of a finger and replicate his success year to year because of that. U of M is building itself up to become that program, and I think it's reached that level of national status, right, of being a national power, national powerhouse program. But now this is really the big year, like I said, with Harbaugh and his own players coaching them up and winning with them on a consistent game-to-game basis. You got to see him beat Ohio State once again, and if he doesn't, I think U of M fans start to turn their backs, at least a little bit, on Jim Harbaugh.
All right, Vito, today, when the podcast drops, do the Michigan Wolverines defeat the Florida Gators on a neutral site in Dallas?
Tough matchup, but I'm going to say yes. And you know why I say yes? I think people have doubted Wilton Speight more than they should, and this U of M football team more than it should, because it's still loaded with talent from top to bottom, and because of the fact, most notably, that Florida has how many suspended players coming into this matchup with U of M, giving U of M an advantage that maybe it did not possess before all the players were suspended from Florida. So I'm saying with that being the case, U of M wins, but they're not going to win in a lopsided amount. I don't see it being that kind of a ball game where they win by a lot and it's over by halftime.
You going to be in the press box, home games?
I will be again in Ann Arbor. Well, at least I should be. I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty darn sure that I will be. Yes, sir. So that'll be fun again, and I should be seeing a good season, I think, once again of U of M football. And you know what? I've been along since day one of the Harbaugh ride in terms of regular season games for Harbaugh. Since day one, game one of Harbaugh's tenure at U of M, I have been along for the ride in some capacity or another, all through my boss at Top Cat Sales, who played at U of M, remember, and won a Rose Bowl at U of M, was the first Rose Bowl winning quarterback under head coach Bo Schembechler. That's a great stat to give out, and one that I know because I work for him. But also really quick, wanted to send my condolences to his family because he lost his mom earlier this week, tragically, at 85. So I want to send my condolences to him and to his family as well.
And, of course, everybody here from the Detroit Sports Podcast Network will send their condolences as well.
Thank you, Doc, for that. And we'll leave you with that on this week's edition of Two Bad Hombres. For John Macaroon, I am Vito Churko signing off for this week's edition.
Thank you to the fine guests Edward Pevos and Aaron McMann for joining us via Vito's VIP line. And if you've enjoyed this podcast and the many others that air, please continue to support us. The free and easy way to support the network is to visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, and you can follow Vito at Vito Jerome.
And we'll see you guys next week. Adios.
Head spin, get fly. I got 6 jobs. I don't get